Hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the latest edition of Scrum Pulse. My name is Ravi Verma. I'm a professional Scrum trainer with Scrum.org, and I will be moderating the conversation today. Let's get started with, I want to tell you a little bit about Scrum.org. So this webinar, as with all the other Scrum Pulse webinars, is enabled by Scrum.org. Scrum.org is a mission-driven company. All of us who work with or for Scrum.org, we have a unifying mission, and that is to improve the profession of software delivery. And one of the many ways in which we try to accomplish our mission is through the Scrum Pulse webinar series. So Scrum Pulse is a free monthly webinar enabled by Scrum.org, and there are certain unifying themes that cut across each and every episode of Scrum Pulse. We want to use these conversations to increase focus on empiricism and agility. These conversations should help us create continuous delivery of value to our internal and external customers and stakeholders. And most importantly, we want to use these conversations to enable trust and respect between business and IT. And there are many ways in which you can plug in. We would love for you to register and then view our previously recorded webinars at our Scrum.org Scrum Pulse page or on our YouTube channel. And we'd love for you to tell us what challenges are you facing and what conversations should we organize in the future. So you can tweet requests for future sessions. You just make sure you mention the handle Scrum.org and Scrum Pulse, and we will get a panel of speakers or panelists for your based on your request. Some housekeeping guidelines. So your microphones are going to be muted throughout the session. However, we would love to hear from you. A couple of ways in which you can send us, share your thoughts, your questions. You can use the question panel of GoToWebinar and type in your questions. And you can also tweet your questions. Just make sure you mention the handle at Scrum.org and mention the hashtag ScrumPulse. So with that, I would like to hand over the speaker to Patricia Kong and Karel Deman. Patricia, if you don't mind, please take over and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Ravi. So my name is Patricia Kong. I actually work for Scrum.org, and I've been here for 4 years. I work with our PSC community and have worked closely with Karel, who is at Avanade, probably for the last, 3 years. So for 3 years, we've been working closely together, and let's say for the last 2 years, we've been great friends. So for 4 years, I've been at Scrum.org, and at Scrum.org, we're focused on improving the profession of software development, or software delivery. What I think about, or what I focus on here, is from an enterprise solution, how do we enable Scrum and agility beyond the single team? So when you hear about Nexus, I think about how do you scale Scrum with Nexus? How do we measure the value of our Agile initiatives, which is, if you read things about evidence-based management, EBM, that's things that I think about. And then in general, what we've been thinking about lately is what environment needs to exist for agility to thrive. So that's going to be a lot of what you see in today's presentation, and I'll pass it along to Karel for you to introduce.
Thanks, Patricia. So my name is Karel Deman. I actually am from Belgium, but I work out of London in United Kingdom for the last 16, 17 years now. And I am the Global DevOps and Agile Coaching Lead at Avanade. So very briefly, Avanade is a joint venture between Microsoft and Accenture. We were founded in 2000, and we have about 25,000 people now represented in 70 odd locations. Okay, so we are really focusing on the Microsoft platform because one of our parents is Microsoft, of course. So let me just get started. We have a very busy set of slides. So for us, when I mean us, I mean Avanade, it's all about demand. What I mean with that is that our clients in the last, I would say, easily 6-7 years have been looking at faster and more flexible development approaches to stay competitive. And, their agility is paramount to their success. And those that actually haven't or are not focusing on that have already failed or are failing and are already out of business. So the key sort of differentiators that they come to us are sort of delivering value quicker, flexibility and change requirements as the project has started, and then also making sure that there is an improved collaboration between their business and IT. And that doesn't necessarily mean us as a consultant company, but it also means their own internal IT organizations as well, which we see sometimes doesn't really work very well, you know, that collaboration. So as a response, Avanade specifically started around 2010 and 11 with the Agile at Avanade sort of initiative. It's an internal initiative to build an enterprise-wide Agile capability, and the width and the depth element I will talk about in the next slide. So we've been at this for about 4 years now officially. Of course, before that we did some agile stuff, but since 2011 we wanted to officialize that, and that's when I sort of started the role of lead for this program. By the way, I've been at Avanade for 16 years, so I did quite a lot of other things before that. So what really worked for us is, and by the way, when you see a slide like this, an orange slide, that means that these are sort of the tips that I want to sort of you to take back home, right? Things that worked for us and that might work for you as well, and then the things that we wanted to avoid. But what worked for us, generically speaking, around the transformation program is that we realized that it is more than putting in place a methodology or a framework. Okay, so I hope that when we go through the slide deck, you will understand that it is more than just that, right? It actually involves us putting in place the right attitude and definitely also the right cultural change throughout all layers of the organization. And with all layers of the organization, this is the depth and the width element that I talked in the previous slide about. First of all, the horizontal sort of layers in the organization. Our company, we have people, consultants that sit in ERP, CRM, that sit in software engineering, etc., etc. And you also, besides that, you also have support organizations which are internally looking, like HR, marketing, etc. So that's the sort of the horizontal element, right? The width. We must make sure that those people are included in the transformation program. But we also must make sure that we have a vertical inclusion as well, and that means to go from even senior executive leadership to local leadership all the way down to our consultants in the field. So that's what we mean with all layers of the organization. What also worked for us is to really make sure, and I'm sure that you all understand that you need to get support and involvement of global and local leadership. It means money-wise, but it also means mind share as well. So we really wanted to make sure, when I talk about the training aspect, that the leadership was also included as well. What we wanted to avoid is that thinking that training alone will build you an enterprise class capability. Okay, it is a big element of that, but it is not the only element of that. So we want to make sure that we don't go down the route of just putting people in front of their PCs and letting them go through a 2-day training and that's it. We have an enterprise class capability. Absolutely not. That is not the way to do it. And thinking that it's only for our consultants was also something we wanted to avoid. We wanted to involve leadership. We also wanted to involve support organizations as well, just like HR and marketing, which I will talk about a little bit later on. So the very first thing I did was, when I started the program, lead the program, was to surround myself with a very tight group of Agile coaches. And these are very carefully selected Agile practitioners and thought leaders across the whole organization. And I do mean people from China all the way to North America, from Northern Europe all the way down to Australia, so to speak. Currently we have about 50 of those, but we started with 12. I don't know if you can see the picture in the background. We call them the Dirty Dozen. They were trained through the Train the Trainer program at Scrum.org. Patricia will talk about Scrum.org and Avanade partnership a little bit later on. But all the Agile coaches have to go through a Train the Trainer program, and also all of them go through the PST program as well. Because of that, we have 17 professional Scrum trainers in the organization, and I will explain why we have those a little bit later on when I talk about training. And we also have 2 evidence-based management engagement managers in the organization as well. So what happened, what worked really well with regards to the Agile coaches? Well, first of all, make sure you surround yourself with a very strong team, because they need to be seen as leaders that will continuously evangelize and build sort of awareness throughout the organization. I've always let them self-manage themselves and just provide leadership support myself, but also from exec leadership as well, and be transparent with them. So anything that came from, let's say, oh, we're running out of budget this year, or we have problems with the program, they would be kept in the loop. Of course, we had bi-weekly meetings in the very beginning, but I kept everything very transparent with that group. And that is to make sure that we instill a culture of learning, of respect and pride. And to be honest, I think within Avanade, the Agile Coaches group, the community, is actually one of the strongest communities we have at Avanade. And the reason for that is because they all went through the training together. A lot of us have seen each other face to face, and we do quite often as well. We meet a lot, and so we have a very strong community. Okay, so when problems have to be solved or we help out projects, we are very tightly connected with each other. Right? I will talk about the talent communities and communities of practice later in the presentation as well. So what we wanted to avoid is to dilute that strength. So we keep the Agile Coaches community very, very strong and ongoing. So meeting each other face to face is an important element of that. Also making sure that the group itself, as it grows, we keep the bar high within that group, and that means everybody goes through the train the trainer program for training, and everybody gets ample opportunity to certify themselves and to do the assessments at Scrum.org, and that ranges from PSPO, PSM, PSD to professional Scrum, so PSCs and the like, so like engagement managers as well. So we really make sure that the Agile coaches have that opportunity to do that. So we keep the bar very high.
Karel, would you? This is Patricia. So would you? I think it would be worthwhile to tell the public about how the Agile coaches go on the journey from first being selected as Agile coaches and then being selected to become professional Scrum trainers also?
Yes. So the way we do it is only the Agile coaches can deliver training, and so when we deliver training, the Agile coaches keep an eye on people with talent, right? And those are the potentially identified Agile coaches for the future, along with those individuals that have expressed a strong will to join the Agile coaches community. What it is that we really want to make sure that that they're not just pushed forward by leadership, they also must earn and show evidence of their experience, of course. But we mostly see that through the trainings that we deliver, and we then invite those people, those groups, to join a train-the-trainer training with Scrum.org. It's a multiple days training in one central location, and that is the base, right? That is the base to be an Agile coach. After that, of course, they need to certify themselves in PSM and in PSD at a certain pass rate, and then they become an Agile coach. But those, because it was a TTT, that are then selected to continue to become a professional Scrum trainer, we would, we are very, very open to that, and we support those coaches as well. So we have, in a way, different, I wouldn't say layers, but we do have different calibers of Agile coaches, of course. We have the PSTs, and then we have the Agile coaches. We also have the Agile sort of subject matter experts within that community as well. So it is a group that you need to move as a whole, and I will talk about the sort of career aspects of that later on in the talent community slide. Okay, so the next slide I will actually hand over to Patricia, because this talks about the Scrum.org and the Avanade partnership.
Thanks, Karel. So backing into what Karel said, this whole journey, probably about 3 years ago, just to give you some context around the relationship that we have, that Scrum.org and Avanade have. About 3 years ago, we have something for our professional Scrum trainers, which is called a face-to-face. So this is where we meet in one global location, and we do a variety of things. But one of those things is that we'll ask professional Scrum trainers to present on something that's related to Agile to Scrum. So Karel actually presented pretty much of what you've seen, his ambitions, Avanade's ambitions, around their Agile journey, around their framework, around their thoughts and values and what they were really trying to do. And so that really started a conversation. I remember Karel actually was talking to Ken Schwaber about this, and then to include myself in the conversation. And we thought, wow, this is really great. You know, they're really thinking, they're really coming from a great place. And we thought about, well, how can we actually learn more from each other and do more together? So if you look at this diagram, when you look at the bold, we were saying, hey, okay, these guys have similar paths and we share the same values. And when I'm talking about values, I'm talking about the Scrum values and the Agile values. So they're approaching it in the right way, doing the right thing. And so we just said, you know what? We're going to learn together and try to do something together. So we said, what kind of partnership can we form where we can be an extension of each other? So it really comes from that place of having the same values as companies and the same goals. So we have this mutuality of interest where we're trying to learn about how to improve the profession of software delivery, and at that point it was software development, but it was really about how do we improve the profession of people, how do we make Avanade a better place to work, how do we deliver more value to our clients, and thinking those things through. So we start to contribute and contribute ideas to each other, and that leads to different things that Scrum.org has introduced into the market, which a lot of validation has come from Avanade, because they have that extension directly into their client base, and they work with very, very large clients. So what's exciting is that they have these Agile coaches, and some of them are becoming more ingrained in our community as individuals through professional Scrum trainers, so they can work with us one-on-one, but they're starting to learn about a lot of different things that they can then take back to their clients. So it was really something that allowed us to create an ecosystem where we're continuously learning from each other, and it all comes from really this great place saying that we believe in the same things and we want to help our customers in a certain way. So just in the interest of time, Karel, if you want to flip to the next slide. When we talk about that, what worked for us and what didn't, it's that joint commitment to the Scrum and Agile values. So 3 years ago, right after we were introduced, and we talked about having this partner, what we call as a partner in principle, we actually went and presented that at the Tech Summit. I don't know if you remember, Karel, but at the Tech Summit, it's an internal Avanade event, and it was the first thing we put up, and we talked about this journey that they were embarking on, how we were going to contribute at Scrum.org, and what it was based on. And so we flipped up, the Scrum values, focus, openness, respect, courage, commitment, and then the Agile manifesto, and said, we're driving from this. What else really worked was a transparent relationship. So besides the fact that Karel and I have a transparent relationship, it's really talking about when they came to us, they're a consulting company, but there was no lip service, right? So they were very upfront and open about their agenda, why they were doing it, and the fact that they had to focus on client first. So what that means is that, a few years ago, they were saying, hey, we still do work with our clients in some waterfall projects. That's our reality. And we're going to have to if they ask us. But they were able to evolve and change, but that was never something where they tried to hide and said, no, we want to do everything Agile right now and all that stuff. So it's very transparent, which has really been helpful for us to kind of work back and forth, because it's a reality for most people. The other way is also transparent when Karel and Avanade are bringing new candidates to us. So some of their coaches come in and we'll say, hey, you know what, they're not at the PST level yet, but here are some areas where they might improve, and you should try again. There's also sometimes, just in general, we can all improve. So they'll be looking at having candidates who are PSTs or PSTs, and we'll say these are areas that they need to focus on. So those are a couple things. There's a focus on internal development that Karel will explain more about, the certification and assessment, but everything is very consistent there, so we know which level people are at. Evidence, there's also evidence-based management, which we run throughout the company to look at different areas of value and how to improve. And then the other thing is really that knowledge sharing, right? So when I say 1 + 1 = 3, it really is that they're thinking about something, we're thinking about something, and we can create some new ideas when we come together. So we touch base very regularly, but also have face-to-face meetings. What we wanted to avoid is having a tit-for-tat relationship. So this relationship, this partnership, is very much agreement-based. So we have the same values, the same culture, we're aiming for the same things. So it's not really a commercial program. It's not something where what I'm interested in is sitting here renewing them on a yearly basis to, make sure that they get a lot of training in. It's really something that we will work as an extension of each other. Is there anything that you want to add, Karel?
No, thank you, Patricia. That was really good. It was comprehensive.
Back to you.
Yeah. So, mentioned already in the beginning, training is not the only thing, but it is an important aspect of building an enterprise class capability. And so the approach I had very early on was to make sure that we have an industry recognized training linked with an industry recognized certification or assessment. And, Scrum.org is perfect for that, and that's why we got to become partners. But we actually licensed training from Scrum.org's development partner Accensient. You can see in the back end maybe a screenshot of Richard Hundhausen. But we licensed the professional Scrum developer course, and that actually is the red thread. That course is red thread throughout the set of other courses that we then developed from that. Because in the second point there, what we definitely needed to do is make sure, if we wanted to train everybody in the organization, is to make sure that we have training to cater for all those layers. So a foundational training for leadership all the way to a deep dive for our Agile practitioners. As part of everybody going through that training, and that is the only Agile training that we do at Avanade. We don't do any other type of training, so that's really important as well, that you stick to that specific element. Everybody that goes through the training is given an opportunity to do an assessment with Scrum.org, either PSM and or PSD, depending on which course they actually attend. So here's an overview of that curriculum that we created. On the right-hand side, the last two are done together, which is together 5 days, where we have first a sort of a level 200 deep dive for Agile project managers, and then followed by 3 days of deep dive for Agile practitioners with the PSD course. We call it the Avanade Scrum Developer course. And then on the other side of the spectrum, on the left-hand side, you've got your foundational classes, which are normally a half a day only, because getting leadership into one room is as painful as herding cats. We only do half a day or maybe a day at most, and this is really targeted our leadership, sales, and delivery leads. Okay, and that's a level 100. So what worked well for us is to create a comprehensive training curriculum, just like I've just shown you, but do it in such a way that it is industry recognized. So that the people come out of it, and if they then do their industry recognized certification and assessment as well, they come out of it with a certain bar, right, with a certain level, and that's really important as well. The other element that was important for us is that this training material is community-led. Okay, so that means that it actually gets updated very frequently, and it gets updated through our community internally, the Agile Coaches community as well as the external community, by the way, as well, because it's a PSD course. What we wanted to avoid was to reinvent the wheel when you develop a training curriculum. Of course, licensing it in is much better, and delivering it in person. So we didn't want to do it virtually, just to get the numbers. As you can imagine, we are 25,000 people. Let's say of those 25,000 people, I would say about 15,000, between 10 and 15,000 are really consultants. All the other people are support organizations. Well, to train that amount of people, you can go do two things. You can push everybody through a virtual training in their own time, or you can do it in-person led. One, of course, is much faster than the other one. We chose for the in-person led training only because it's very important that we see the interaction between the teams, that we see people working together, that the Agile coaches and the trainers are observing them, and there's a lot of exercises that we do. So that works best for us. By the way, we do training. A training class is 30 people maximum and is 2 trainers at the same time. So you really do need to do quite a lot of training, but that's what we've done. So another big element, so besides the training, is the talent communities and communities of practice. So first of all, we had quite a lot of people, communities of practice already. We did that through distributed, not distributed. We did that through Outlook. I think it was NewsGator, it was called, to have distribution lists within Outlook. And that sort of worked. But the problem is that it wasn't sort of officialized. And what I mean with that is that we wanted a structure which then we came up with, and we call that talent communities that were recently introduced, a structure where people can align to their career aspirations. So people choose to be part of a talent community that is aligned to the career that they want to have at Avanade. So people that are very specific in ERP, for instance, will be part of the ERP talent community. Those, for instance, that are really want to make a career out of being a DevOps coach or an Agile coach can be part of the DevOps and Agile coaching talent community, which I lead, by the way. So they can be part of that. So it's aligned to their career aspirations. The other thing is that we really wanted to make sure that when we did that, that we build capability. So that means, train people and make sure that people are experienced with and aligned to market demand. So why would you create capability in something that there is no demand for? So we really wanted to make sure that that is perfectly aligned, and we do that through the talent communities as well. And also the last point there is to have recognizable subject matter experts. So the people that are in those talent communities, they are recognized regularly, but also for them, so that you can have people that have a technical career track or path through the organization, and then they are recognized in those talent communities. So,
Karel, if I just wanted to inject, what's interesting from my point of view as somebody who wasn't inside Avanade but very close was that when we started the conversation about what Avanade was trying to do, there were communities of practice, sure, but there was never a conversation about talent community, and it's almost a result of seeing what was happening and the success that was happening with the work around the Agile at Avanade program. So it was almost an evolution and a representation of that, and I think that that's fantastic for the talent communities to evolve, because it shows your investment in the people and in the internal development.
Yeah, that is correct. And what I wanted to say as well is that, of course, when one person can only be in one talent community, how can they then benefit also being part of other communities? And that's why we still overlay the communities of practice sort of in a matrix sort of way. So people can be part of multiple communities of practice while sitting in one talent community. Okay, we have very vibrant Yammer communities, and they both support the community of practices and the talent communities. And through the talent communities, people can, for instance, now specifically go to subject matter expert conferences, etc. So we invite people to do that. We have about 20 of these talent communities, and they range from, believe it or not, leadership is a talent community as well. So the exec leadership is in one of those. Finance, HR, which is all sort of internal, and then also external ones like DevOps and Agile coaching and software engineering, just to name two. But there's about 20 of those. So what worked for us is to officialize the talent communities, the communities of practice, to officialize that, and to allow a career growth model with skills and roles nicely fitted to those talent communities, and also to include support organizations. So like I mentioned, like HR and finance and marketing, for them to also fit in that talent community model. And that actually for them has helped tremendously, because before the communities of practice were really mostly for our consultants, but internal organizations have really and are benefiting from that as well. And of course, what you do need with that is that you need executive stakeholders, right? It needs to be officialized, but it also comes with a budget. So each and every TC has a budget to spend on going to conferences and organize training and certification. What we wanted to avoid is that we only have TCs, talent communities, that are aligned with technologies. So that definitely we wanted to avoid, and only for it to be a tool. So when you talk about communities of practice, to only sort of say, oh, we have Yammer, so we've got communities of practice. It's more than that. So whilst I have been talking mostly about building a capability, an enterprise scale capability around external sort of for external purposes, towards our clients, there's also the matter of creating an internal capability as well. And that's why, admittedly, in the beginning, we only focused on the external ones the first year, but then very quickly we realized that the internal support organizations also needed to start working in an agile way, and they wanted to work in an agile way. So we are supporting them as well in their endeavors. So several internal teams have adopted, and others are following, like this fiscal year and going forward. They've already outlined that. But we have, of course, our internal ITS, that's our internal IT organization, have adopted an agile way of working. So they only use Scrum to do their projects internally. And recently as well, in the last year, marketing. So myself and a couple of other agile coaches have help marketing with a small project, sort of a pilot to adopt a Scrum way of working, using Visual Studio Team Services. They were using all the Scrum events, artifacts and roles for the last 7 months. They then presented their results, which were very positive, to the CMO, the Chief Marketing Officer, and she then decided, let's roll this out for the whole of marketing, and that's what we're currently now doing in the next fiscal. And Patricia didn't mention it, but when we talked about the slide about Scrum.org and Avanade partnership, there was the Nexus framework there, which is sort of the scaling professional Scrum. We are going and we are implementing that, for instance, for marketing, because we're talking about 100+ people. They need to work together as well, and that's where we will, for instance, use the thought leadership from Scrum.org to implement that. It's also important to educate leadership, though, leadership in sales and delivery execs and local and exec leadership as well. So again, there Scrum.org will play a role in doing that. So it's also not only external, but also internal. So what worked for us with that, and especially with that group of people, for instance, like the marketing people, take baby steps, okay? Do it slowly. When you're introducing them to a tool like VSTS to manage their product backlog, you need to really do that slowly and bit by bit. The end game, but it has to be a journey for them, okay? And you need to assist them. Using a distributed tool like VSTS for product backlog management, which has a very easy to use web interface, definitely very, very productive for them. Adjusted training is also instrumental, so we couldn't actually give them the training that we normally do to the consultants, so we adjusted the training slightly to focus on, let's say, what does it mean for finance? What does it mean for marketing? And the coaching element was instrumental. So myself and another Agile coach here in the UK, Tony Hinckley, I don't know if he's on the call, but he supported the team very much throughout. And as always, executive support throughout. So the CMO, right, or the CFO, they need to provide that support to their teams to make sure that they will see it through. What we wanted to avoid is big bang approach. Of course, that's never good. And also to make sure that people don't have the fear of technology and process lockdown. So that's why you need to take baby steps with both the tooling and the process side of things. Very slow.
And I think the baby steps is really valid, Karel, because I remember with marketing and even with the executive support, we used to shoot videos and we were trying to market internally. So they were already seeing us marketing internally this message about what does it mean to be agile at Avanade. And so for them to be exposed from it that way, to understand the why and the how is very successful there.
Yeah. Thank you, Patricia. Another element is that we, as a consulting company, we need to provide end-to-end project lifecycle support. And when we talk about an agile implementation, it's not just the, like the build phase, right? We need to work in an agile fashion, an agile way, the minute we start talking to our clients or when they approach us. So the salespeople and the opportunity teams need to understand what it means to work in an agile way. And then on the other side of the spectrum, when we deploy the solution into an environment, the operation side of things needs to be understood. How do we do that in an agile fashion? So we created a sort of disciplined enterprise level agile approach supporting all sides of the business and the end-to-end life cycle. When I mean disciplined, I don't mean prescriptive. I mean a specific direction we want people to think in, so that people will use Scaled Scrum as defined by Scrum.org and not by any other organization, not using any of the other scaled frameworks. So that's what discipline means, okay? So that everybody from Sydney to, let's say, Seattle talks the same talk, right? And walks the same walk in terms of agile implementation. All the guidance that we have is based on the Scaled Professional Scrum framework or the Scrum framework at its core. The guidance I would create is very lightweight. It is non-prescriptive, and it's basically a collection of practices and guidances around scale, distribution, because we of course do a lot of development with distributed teams, including offshore development centers, nearshore development centers, and on location. And we focus a lot on continuous delivery and modern engineering. So people know that as DevOps. We like to call it modern engineering, but we keep it to practices and guidance, not non-prescriptive. Okay, so that is what we created very early on. So keep to one version of the truth for the whole company. I mentioned that as well, so that people in Australia and people in North America all have the same viewpoint and the same vision when it comes to Agile and implementations of Scrum, whether it's scaled or not scaled, whether it's distributed or not. Keeping it succinct and to the point, right? It's really not big, our sort of framework. It's very lightweight, and when you do create that, you need to evangelize that continuously. So to make sure that people get it, so that people don't just repeat it as like parrots, they need to really understand what it is. And so the training is an important part there. Being open to continuously inspect and adapt. So it's a living thing. So this framework that I talk about has evolved quite a bit, and it continues to evolve as well. The Agile Coaches community helps out very much in doing that, but also a wider community as well. So we need to continuously inspect and adapt. What that means is when we go to projects, we learn something for the projects, we bring that back. Okay, we always harvest from our projects with regards to that. What we wanted to avoid is to wrap a traditional methodology around an Agile one. Okay, so we had a traditional methodology, and we still have one for those cases where clients want to go down that route, but we didn't want to sort of create an Agile framework from that. So when we created the end-to-end project lifecycle framework I talk about, we started from scratch, and it's, by the way, completely separate as well. Okay, we didn't want to keep it too prescriptive, and we definitely didn't want to make it a body of knowledge. Okay, so that's not the objective either, a heavyweight body of knowledge. So some finishing thoughts, I think this is the last slide, is that it is a long-term journey. Okay, so it's been going on for 4 years, and it's still counting. When you start with something like this, you need to make sure that you understand it is a long-term commitment. And for that, the third point here, leadership buy-in is essential for long-term as well. So connect the top-down support, and that's budget basically, and also mindshare. Connect that with the bottom-up enthusiasm, because a lot of people say we want to do it, but you need to connect those two, otherwise it's not going to fly. The second point is to start small but think big. So when I 4 years would have thought all the things I needed to do that I have done up until now, I would have never started. So don't think or plan too much, just get started. Okay, it's like with Scrum, when you implement Scrum framework, it's exactly the same thing. So start small but think big. Okay, and the last thing is, and this has been really important, is find a suitable partner to keep yourself real, keep it real. And I think we have found that in Scrum.org, and it is a fantastic partnership that keeps us real going forward and helps us through this journey that keeps on going, which is fantastic. So I think that is the last slide. Ravi, I can actually hand over back to you.
Can I just
yes, Patricia, sorry.
Interject one thing about, it was great to hear that you're happy about being a partner with Scrum.org. One of the things that, for my personal mantra, is around continuous improvement. And one of the things that, and while they've, we're happy to partner with Avanade, one of the things that I think is true is that change can't be outsourced. So all the work that Avanade has done is by enabling their own employees, their own people to do these sort of things. And whether you're out there and you're listening to this Scrum Pulse, whether it's about you're helping other companies or you're a practitioner in your own company, it's really about making sure that you're enabling the people to take this journey. So that's something that I think is great. Now we can pass it to Ravi.
Okay, thank you, Trish and Karel. So just a reminder for all our attendees that this is a great time for you to share your questions and thoughts. We've already started seeing a lot of questions come in. 2 ways to share your questions. You can tweet them. Make sure you mention the handle Scrum.org and the hashtag ScrumPulse. And the second way is type into your questions panel. So if you don't mind, I'd like to start with an awesome question from Venkatesh. And Venkatesh's question is, when we are helping an organizational transformation, it is conceivable that not all ecosystems will have problems in the complex domain, and some of them may be in the complicated domain. and it is possible that Scrum may not be the only way to enable agility. So how do coaches in Avanade strike the balance between, becoming purists and, advocating that Scrum is the only way versus being pragmatist and integrating other agile practices and frameworks, maybe in a situational basis, maybe Kanban or XP?
Yeah, very, very good question, actually. So there's several ways. First of all, we've got the sort of the peer community, the peer group that keeps, that keeps an eye on how other agile coaches approach problems with customers and how to deal with those. Not to become too purist. We have all been made very aware, and all the people that are agile coaches have been in the company for quite a while. That's not mandatory, but have had experience with dealing with clients. And when you deal with clients, you know that the world is not ideal out there, and you need to make sure that you bring the customer on a journey from a point A to point B, basically. And when you do that, you need to employ those baby steps to do that. So so sometimes you go through what we would call a hybrid sort of situation, and there's nothing wrong with that, as long as you know that the hybrid situation is not the end game, right? That the end game is a sort of a Scrum implementation that we all would like to see, but you need to make sure that you can't do that from day one to day two. You need to really do that step by step. So we have in our framework, we've got techniques in there that actually say, what does a hybrid solution actually mean? What can you take on board? What can't you take on board? When are things best to be taken on board? So that's one thing. We give that support. The other one is we have a qualifying tool. It's called the Avanade suitability filters tool, that when opportunity teams get an opportunity, they go through the questionnaire. It's about 30 questions that are being asked. It's an online tool internally. They fill in the questions, and it gives sort of the suitability to Agile or not in that tool. The score is not really important, whether it's 70% or 80%. That's not important. What is important is that it brings the opportunity teams in contact with the Agile coaches, who will then pick up with the client and with the opportunity teams to make sure that they follow, the right sort of direction when it comes down to, having that conversation, sometimes tough conversations with clients, whether to implement in an Agile way or not. Because we do have clients that, the CIO has just come back from an Agile conference and wants to implement Agile, but nobody in his or her organization is capable of doing that. And just doing that by hiring in people like Avanade is not a desired sort of approach. So we point that out to them, and we point out that there is potential for training from our side together with Scrum.org with that client, or that it's a journey for them, and we can help them with that journey as well, that they need to take that into mind, so that it's a long-term sort of commitment. So we have on one side a tool for that, and we have on the other side guidelines, and our Agile coaches are definitely aware of that. I hope that sort of answers the question.
I wanted to add something from a Scrum.org point of view to Venkatesh's question. So what's interesting is that obviously at Scrum.org, we're purists about Scrum, right? What is Scrum? What are the pillars of Scrum, etc. But what you might find interesting is that our goal, our mission is to improve the profession of software delivery, right? So what's interesting is we have 160 professional Scrum trainers. Many of those people might be certified in something like Kanban. And a lot of people, they might be aware, for instance, of SAFe. And it's about understanding the ecosystem of what is available, what's out there, why it's there, and when to use what's appropriate. So I think that what Avanade is doing is very interesting, but it's also to say, hey, when you use Scrum, that, what does that mean about these other things is always the question.
So to the Kanban thing, for instance, we propose consultants to use Kanban in a operations mode. So when they're doing software support, for instance, that's where we would be looking at Kanban rather than a Scrum way of working. So we're pretty open to that. Not safe though.
Ravi, next question.
Okay. So that helps. Now we've started getting a bunch of questions which all have a unifying theme. So there's a question from Mikkel, Venkatesh, Simon, and Stefan, and I think maybe Manish. Now, and here's the challenge that I have also faced. The questions are around the mindset both of internal and external customers, where let's imagine we are transitioning from a waterfall kind of thinking And success is defined more in the terms of projects. And the project maybe traditionally is defined to be successful from a fixed date, fixed scope, fixed cost kind of model. So if you meet the date, you deliver the features in the BRD, and you stay within the budget, it's success. Now, how have you enabled internal or external customers to transition from that waterfall mindset in terms of defining success and metrics? And how have we helped them transition to a different set of ways of defining value and measuring leading and lagging indicators of value?
So there's various questions in that, various answers to it as well. From a transformation perspective, so with regards to the program itself, we measure value, we measure a success through metrics that are sort of linked to the EBM, so evidence-based management program from Scrum.org. So maybe Patricia can talk about that as well. When it comes to internal support organizations, the mindset has actually, that wasn't the biggest problem. Actually, the biggest problem with mindsets is clients, is not external clients, not internal clients, but is for them to focus on providing value quicker with less effort, right? So I wouldn't say less effort, but sort of nearly minimal viable product sort of approach. In quite a lot of occasions with, for instance, the marketing team, they had a lot of team members that were really focusing on gold plating quite a lot, and doing a program that took several months, and the support organizations that depended on them, so like for instance myself, but also other third parties outside of Avanade, were very frustrated that the end result was way too heavy and way too late. And so we focused on define your minimum viable product and focus on producing value quicker, and don't look at any other sort of metrics that people were already accustomed to. So that was an easy thing, because when the marketing teams, they started working in an agile way, using first of all the tooling, because they had never used tooling. Their tool of choice was Excel, and then they chose a distributed tool like VSTS. There was a huge step for them, but they saw that actually they could create content much faster and get it more precise, to the point, talking to their clients much quicker. And so for them to sort of make them understand that they needed to change their way of thinking about what they were producing and how they were producing it, that went very quickly. That was very easy. With clients, it's a much tougher conversation to have had. We still see a lot of projects coming for fixed fee and coming for a fixed scope by a specific date. Our recommendation is that when we have an opportunity team that is talking to a client, and that is identified through that tool, by the way, and it is a fixed fee project, we will entertain a conversation with that client to change their mind, to maybe start with fixed fee in, let's say, a scoping sort of period, where we scope out what needs to be done, and then after that we would propose them to switch to time as a material way of working when they have gained some trust to work with us. So we have very clear guidelines around contracting, but also around how should sales or the client execs have that conversation with the client to sort of change their mind to work along a more sort of suitable framework for working in an agile and a Scrum way of working, and that has been quite successful. Okay, so Patricia, is there anything you wanted to say about the EBM stuff?
Sure. So EBM, again, it stands for evidence-based management, and it really is something that Scrum.org was thinking strongly about, I want to say 5-6 years ago, and it was a little bit too early when we were talking about it. And now it's becoming quite popular, and it is a little bit about how do you measure value whether you're doing waterfall or if you're doing Agile or something. But how do you know what you're doing is delivering value back to your company or to your customers? So we've done this a couple of times at Avanade and also with their clients. When we think about evidence-based management and we're looking from a value perspective, right, and this is very strong with leadership, is we're looking at 3 different key value areas, and I'm sure one day I'll do a Scrum Pulse on this too, but it's really about looking at current value. What is the current value of the product, and what is your ability to innovate and your time to market? So we have these 3 measurements that we're looking at in those 3 different areas, and it does not matter what kind of process or methodology you're using. We're looking at those 3 areas to see how can we improve from that holistic view. Ravi actually is very experienced in using it, in using the framework to help clients improve. And we look at those different areas, and then we say, okay, within those areas, there's about 12 other metrics that are in there. We measure that. It gives us a spotlight. It gives us an understanding of what's working, what's not. Let's try to improve that area and then measure again. So we really think about those things to help clients improve. And it also is part of a larger conversation when you're saying, I'm measuring the value around this software, around IT, around this project. It's saying this is an asset. And so there's a very large conversation that we're having around EBM that I hope I can share with you guys at another time.
Very cool. Thank you, Karel and Trish. I do want to emphasize the importance of these value-based questions. And we have a tendency in a lot of project-based companies to just swing into action and fund a project. And we rarely look back at projects which were delivered in the past and validate our hypotheses on, did those projects that we funded, did they generate the value that we were hoping? And if not, that's completely okay. How can we learn and then adapt our future investments? So we have an awesome Scrum Pulse webinar by Don McGrath, who's one of our most inspiring trainers. It's Scrum Pulse webcast number 5, where he talks about value-based decision-making, value-based metrics. So if you want to figure out how to operationalize value-based conversations in your company, I hope you will look at the Scrum Pulse webcast number 5. Trish and Karel, thank you for sharing your thoughts on value-based decision-making. I think Simon also had a similar question, which I think will be answered by watching the webcast or exploring evidence-based management. Simon's question was, how can you have more governance, value-based governance for funding projects, especially if they are for internal, from internal stakeholders? I do have a couple of follow-up questions. One question was, Karel, does the sales organization also use Scrum? I know you mentioned marketing does, but what about sales?
Sales does in pockets. So I would say in North America they do. I haven't actually interacted with them directly for them internally to work in an agile way. Not just yet. But we have in the last 3 years been sort of educating them, in an agile way of working, but not necessarily for them to work in agile, but for them to be able to and enable them to talk to agile clients. So, but that is on the books, most definitely.
Very good. Okay. There was one follow-up question. Well, there was one question about DevOps. So, what is DevOps, and how can business and the development teams and the Scrum teams, how can they partner to deliver value faster? So again, there is one webinar, Scrum Pulse webinar on the topic of DevOps. It's number 7. If you guys want, you can look at that for more detail. But Karel, I'm wondering if you could give us a brief answer on how you guys interpret DevOps and how you guys use DevOps to enable faster delivery to the market.
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, we don't necessarily call it DevOps. We call it sort of modern engineering, and it's really focused on, it's not just guidelines, and it's not tools only either, and it's not just about people either. It's actually the combination of all of those. So it's really about instilling a culture of modern engineering, of DevOps. But we focus a lot on automation, of course, automation through tooling, and making sure that our people understand how to do automation through tooling when it comes to continuous delivery, continuous integration, but not just only of software, but also of infrastructure as well. So we do continuous delivery with infrastructure. It means rebuild the whole environment whenever there is a new version of the software as well. On projects, we've seen that that really helps us tremendously, not only for supporting the end product, like the solution that we need to build for the customer, but also how we then do the development of that. So coming to the project, where the project teams already have a development environment set up for them, a centralized distributed tool like VSTS set up for them, specifically with a reporting attached to that using Power BI, etc., etc. All of that, right, helps and falls under the banner of automation and sort of modern software engineering to help our people deliver faster and higher quality as well.
Very good. Okay.
I think this merits probably a Scrum Pulse on itself. To be honest, it's a really big topic. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Okay. Okay, folks. We are approaching the end of our time box. So I love this conversation, but I do want to be respectful of your time and eat our own dog food. So we had some great questions. So Karel, if you don't mind, if you could transition to the next slide.
Yes.
Today we are scratching just the surface. It's the tip of an iceberg. Enterprise Agile transformation at a 25,000 person company. It is not a trivial undertaking, and very few have tried to climb this mountain, and very few have survived to tell the tale. So I'm honored that Karel and Trish have made time to give back to the community. Let's continue the conversation. We had so many questions, we just could not answer all of them. But what I hope is that you will join our Scrum.org community. You will tap into the wisdom of other practitioners like yourself, share your successes, your celebrations, your disappointments. So please use our discussion forum, discussion groups on Scrum.org community tab. And also what we would love is if you have ideas, send us questions or suggestions for the future Scrum Pulses. Read the blog posts from our trainers like Karel. So today you just got a taste of the power of the wisdom of the Scrum.org professional Scrum trainer community. Plenty of blogs where our trainers and coaches like Karel have shared their hard-won wisdom, so that you don't have to, take that same journey and give you some shortcuts. So I hope that you will read our blog. And with that, I think we are coming to the end of our session. So Karel, if you don't mind, just a reminder, Scrum.org, we are a mission-driven community and a company. We exist because we want to improve the profession of software delivery. We cannot do it alone. We need your help. So those who share the same values and principles, please join our community in whatever form that calls you, that inspires you. And I think we'd love to see you in our future sessions. If you enjoyed this session, look at our other recordings, spread the word. And with that, we've come to the end of this exciting session of Scrum Pulse. Thank you for joining. I wish you a good evening, good night, good rest of the day, and I hope to see you at the next Scrum Pulse. Thank you, and see you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.